Welcome to Soul Over It, the podcast where science meets spirituality. Get ready to explore the hidden truths of health optimization, wellness, spirituality, and empowerment. We are your hosts, Taylor and Abby Scarpello. Let's dive in.
On today's episode, we are sitting down with Kelsey Lensman, entrepreneur, fellow Buckeye, sports medicine specialist, sought-after speaker, and self-proclaimed normal girl on a big, big mission.
On today's episode, we're spicing things up during our interview with a little bit of a new approach. Kelsey feels that this upcoming year is about expansion and looking to where she's headed. Early 2024 for Kelsey allowed her to realize she is soul over settling for less than she deserves. She was over her own BS, which led her to stimulate growth. So Kelsey is soul into stepping into the best version of herself and proud of how far she's come.
She founded EmpowHER Fitness that coaches women all around the country in their nutrition, fitness, and mindset, as well as EmpowHER Fitness events. She's also created Mission 48, where she competed in 48 fitness competitions in 48 states in 48 days. These events are all about challenging women to step out of their comfort zone and prove they are stronger than they think.
Her goal is to inspire women to do hard things, push their limits, and build true self-confidence. She's currently writing a book and creating a documentary from Mission 48 that will be released in 2025.
Let's welcome Kelsey Lensman on today's episode. Welcome, Kelsey, to Soul Over It. We are so excited to have you on today's episode. Before we get started, we have to wish you a happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. I'm telling you, I told you too initially. There's nobody else I want to start my birthday with than doing a podcast with you two. So I'm excited to be here.
Well, we're so excited to have you on our episode, chat a little bit more about a little spirituality, empowerment, fitness, whole 9 yards.
I'm excited.
So I loved when we connected, or I guess we actually went to college together years ago, fellow Buckeye. But I loved when we connected recently and you asked us to have a little twist and spin on today's episode. And it brought a whole new perspective to Soul Over It. So we're so excited to dive a little deeper into that, your journey, and what excites you for this upcoming year, and just allowing yourself to become that best version of yourself, taking the next steps. And we've been through so many challenges, obstacles, you name it, and it allows and makes us feel that we're also not alone, as well as our audience and even yourself. And you're never alone on your journey, no matter what you're going through.
Mm-hmm. No, and I'm excited. Thank you for letting me have my twist in it, because I was like, you know what? I feel stuff viscerally. And I'm like, you know what? This just feels right to me. And I'm like, let me see if I can put a twist in it. So thank you for allowing me to take this in a good direction.
So what is it that you are soul into?
Oh, there we go. I love it. So it's funny when you guys first talked to me, like, okay, like, what are you soul over? You know, and there were a few things that initially came up to my brain, but it just didn't feel right to me. And I was like, you know what? This past year, not to go into all of the nuts and bolts of it, but it was a very, challenging, but also transformative year for me. I got out of a 7-year relationship earlier this year, and I made a really hard decision that one. Professionally, made some really big decisions in my business that, made it to be a lot different than what it was before. And if you would have asked the Kelsey a year ago, Taylor and Abby, like, I was soul over a lot. Like, I was like, I'm over kind of settling for what everybody else wants, but not really listening to my own gut and intuition and alignment. I'm so over like all these things, But at the beginning of the year, it was literally January 1st. And I remember telling myself, like, Kels, quit avoiding hard conversations. You know your decision. You know the direction that you want to go. You know what you have to do. You're just avoiding doing it, And it was because I care about these people, and, I want to make sure that, they're taken care of short and long term. And so I was avoiding a lot of things. And I got to a point with this might hit with your audience where I was soul over being over it. I got to a point where sometimes not that you need to hit, a rock bottom, but sometimes you need to be over it to give you enough, oomph to make that hard decision. And so a year ago, January 1, I made 2 really hard decisions, and it changed the trajectory for me. And then from January 1 to about March and April, as many of maybe you guys have experienced or anybody listening, like when you make that hard decision and kind of that course correction, it's not that it's just rainbows and sunshine and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy and amazing. Like I went from kind of having a lot of known in my life to, oh wait, like I don't have that other person in my life now, like my best friend that I was with, even though I knew it was the right decision, there was still much so unknown and still so much so uncovering of myself that felt icky. Like that's the best way that I can describe it. Like it felt tough. It felt, did I make the right decision? It felt, wait, like what way do I want to go? But that also was the same time where I grew so much personally, like spiritually, mentally, emotionally. I got to understand, okay, who is Kelsey now? Like not who is she or who was she? Like who do I want to become? And that's when, to make this a long story long, when you asked me about like what I'm so over, I'm like, a year ago, I would have been over a lot. But now, because I've done so much work and I continue to do so much work, like I'm ready to soul step into like this next version of me. I'm ready to soul step into like the expansion. And I think there's a time to kind of not necessarily run away from the pain, but there's a time to like be so over it to like give you that oomph to make a decision. And then there's also a time to say, okay, this is what I want. I'm going after it, And so I think that's where I'm stepping into, all right, Kelsey, you're not playing small anymore, girl. Like quit holding yourself back. Like let the chains go and become all that you can for yourself, but also for everybody else around you too. So that was a long story to say, we're stepping into kind of that next level version of me that I was holding myself back for so long.
I love that. And I think that is so relatable to,
for sure,
I mean, us, to so many people where it's like you get pushed over that edge where it's like you need to do that work. You need to like, you just got to start doing that work and it comes to that point where it's like you get everything gets stripped away. And it's like, oh, you're faced with all these questions. Who am I? Where am I going? Like, what's next? And that's, like you said, that's where the growth is.
Exactly. And that's where the growth happens, the change happens. And change doesn't happen when you're comfortable. You have to hit those times and allow that fear, allow that uncomfortableness to come up so that you can step into that next version of yourself, which then leads to the best version of yourself. And when you get there and when you're in the midst of it, it could be challenging. It could be so hard and you want to quit. You want to run the other way. But it is so freeing and so empowering.
Yeah. And I heard this actually quote from a podcast that it gave words and verbiage to everything that like kind of you and all of us are talking about. They said the night or the day doesn't start at 12 p.m. in the middle of the day. Like the day doesn't start when it's rainbows and sunshine and super bright outside and the sun shining. The day starts at 12 a.m. when it is dark, when nobody would say, okay, the day's going to start at 12 a.m., And that is such a beautiful parallel to, I think, growth and expansion is when you're kind of in that dark season, it can feel like, not that the world is ending, but sometimes it can. It can feel like, am I ever going to get out of here? It can feel
Absolutely.
like, am I ever going to see that light again? It can feel like, wait, but it's easier just for me to retreat and go back to doing what I've done, even if I know that's not right for me. But that's what's known, And I think that's such a beautiful parallel of when you're in that darkness or you're in that season, it's actually when that next you is beginning. It doesn't begin when you feel that next version of you. It actually begins when you're in that dark and it's the questioning and it's the contemplation and it's the wanting to run back. So I just want to share that with your audience too, because I think some people might be listening to this and they feel like they're in that 12 a.m. darkness. And I want to tell them like, you're actually at the beginning of such a beautiful journey. You just have to keep walking and putting that next hour in front of the other to get to the light.
And that's what it is. It's continuing to show up for yourself. And even though it's not easy and you feel like you're stuck and you're not going to get out, it's just those baby steps. You just have to keep putting one foot in front of the other and you will see the light.
It's that consistency. And you said it perfectly. And so can you take us a little bit, or I guess walk us through your mindset and what allowed you to make those decisions about the hard conversations that you wanted to have?
Oh man. Yeah. So not to go into this whole backstory of it, but last year, well, about 2.5 years ago, I had this crazy idea to do, this big campaign to raise money for a charity for young girls to help them with confidence. And it was crazy. It was doing 48 different fitness competitions in 48 states. And then I was
This is
originally
amazing.
and why people either
Amazing.
Amazing.
crazy. It depends who I talk to. They're like, it's so cool, or wait, you're out of your mind. But I had that idea like 2.5 years ago. And once again, I kind of put it on the back burner because I'm like, how do you do it? Is this just a crazy idea? Like, quote unquote, Kels, it's not realistic. Like, all these reasons why I shouldn't do it were pulling up, right? And then finally, kind of fast forward a year later, I'm like, okay, Kels, this is either going to be something that is always your what if. What if you would have done this? What if you could do this? And not to tangent off of this, but I have a theory. I don't even think it's my theory, but I've like cultivated over the time. I called it my rocking chair theory, where I envision myself like 98 years old on my rocking chair. And like I'm in front of a fireplace. I have my little blanket. Like I have this visual of Kelsey at 98 years old. She's still a badass, I might have to say. But like I see that version of me, right? And I always think about that version when I'm having really hard decisions to make. And I'm like, my biggest success in life is to look at that version and have her think, Kels, like you freaking did it, girl. Like you didn't let doubt, fear, hesitation, questioning like stop you, right? And she's proud of, not that she did everything right, but she's proud of the risk that she's took and the life that she's lived, right? On the flip end, my biggest fear of life, and sometimes if I'm honest, this is a bigger kind of stimulator of certain decisions, is getting to that version of me and thinking, what if? Like, what if you would have taken the crazy chance to do Mission 48? What if you would have made the hard decision about your relationship, even if it was super uncomfortable, right? And so when I was putting this whole plan together, I thought about that 98-year-old version, and I was like, Kels, like that version of you would always think, what if you didn't put this whole crazy charity 48 state campaign together? And so I'm like, all right, like, let's go for it. And so then last year, so this has been 2023, I did the 48 competitions in 48 states in 48 days, which was the kicker. And we raised money for charity, and some things were amazing and some things were really not great. Like it did not plan out in some ways that I expected it to, which is anything, But I bring that up to say those 48 days, like, were such a pattern interrupt of my life. Like I wasn't waking up, going to work, coming back from work, going to it. Like I wasn't in this kind of monotonous, which is amazing sometimes, but I wasn't in this routine, right? 48 days, everything was different. And I tell people, you don't need a 48-day crazy campaign to do this. But what can so oftentimes happen is we just get into this routine and this pattern, and then we wake up and it's 5 years later and we're like, what the freak just happened? Like, wait, it's now 2024. And it just feels not that time was wasted, but if we really don't take a moment to pause and say, okay, am I on the right trajectory? Like, do I actually want these things for my life? That can feel, you really don't ever ask yourself those questions. So once again, I don't mean to be long-winded on this podcast, but I guess I am today. The reason that was so impactful and the reason why I made those decisions is that 48-day pattern interrupt was like, okay, you're coming back from this campaign. There's certain areas of your life that you want to look the same. There's certain areas of your life that you don't want coming back. And so that prompted to me to stop avoiding and to really look in the mirror and say, okay, Kels, like quit stalling these conversations, make the hard decisions, and they might be right and they might not be right, but you at least have to make some decision going forward.
That's amazing. You are such an inspiration and filled with so much knowledge and wisdom at such a young age.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful just to see and to watch on the other side.
Oh, it's been wild. I always say sometimes I feel like I have to learn the lessons the hard way, which I try to not make that the belief, but I feel like I do sometimes. So.
You're not alone. Yeah, you're definitely not alone.
You're gonna do the same thing. But just looking back, what if you didn't do Mission 48 and allowed fear to take over? You would be in a completely different timeline, on a completely different path.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it would always be the kind of what if thought in my brain, and it was challenging. And this might also hit home with some of your audience was like for years before, we were helping a lot of women in their nutrition and fitness. Like we were doing good work out in the world. Like it's not like, my life was burning up before. And I always say, not me, I got this from a book, I think, but I always say, good is really the enemy of what your great could be, right? Like my life was good. Like it was good. Like I'm so thankful. I have a roof over my head. I have a dog. I had a great partner. Like life was good, but also good doesn't mean that's truly the life that you're meant to live. Like this amazing, fulfilled life. And it's not saying every single moment of your life you're going to be like, I just love waking up and I love, jumping in bed at 5 a.m. But I think every single one of us know deep in our heart, like what's aligned and when we know we're on the right path versus, oh, I'm settling for good. Like, oh, like it's not where I'm meant to be, And so I think that was the hardest thing for me, Avante, is like my life was good, but I knew that I couldn't stay there. But from the outside looking in, it was so easy for me to stay there because it wasn't necessarily burning up. But I think you get to a point, and I got to a point where, in my opinion, God, but whatever you believe in, like, I think God was like, all right, Kels, like, quit messing around with this good. Like, you're meant for more. And for me, like, I had this gut feeling that kept coming up. And I couldn't ignore it after a while. And I talk about, in the process of writing a book that'll be out, but like, I talk about the nudge. Like, there's a nudge inside of every single one of us that's like, Taylor, go this direction. Abby, like, you're meant for this. But we ignore it because it's good. We ignore it because nothing's burning up totally. And I think we get to a point where hopefully nothing bad happens, right? But I think we get to a point where we make a decision of, okay, am I going to acknowledge that nudge? Or am I going to pretend it's not there and continually try to push it down and just, I don't know. I don't know the word that I want to use, but distract myself from acknowledging it, if that makes sense. So I think that's that point. And I'm like, quit distracting yourself. Like, just pursue it,
Exactly. And you keep yourself limited and you're not allowing yourself to break free and live in your highest potential, where you're staying small, you're playing small. And when you know that you are worth and so worthy of more, and if your intuition is telling you, hey, you need to do X, Y, and Z, you better do it before things start to happen and you're like forced to either end something or to really get thrown into it and start something. Yeah. Because I mean, we could relate to that on so many levels, between injuries, autoimmune disease, different business challenges. And it's so challenging, or it can be hard and difficult to make those decisions. But in the moment, you have to choose yourself. And by choosing yourself, that's choosing love.
That's good. Yeah. I mean, it's tough. It's tough because I think I just listen to a lot of podcasts. I was listening to a podcast this week, and it's a theme of my life. And I think I got stuck a lot in, like, what is the right decision? Like, what is the right path? What is the right decision? I think a lot of my avoidance of making a decision, well, I don't know what the right decision was. And I wrestled with that for so long. And I think a lot of people, some may be listening, is like, well, I don't know what decision to make because I don't know what the right path is. And you can be stuck there for years, So yeah. But I heard on this podcast, and it's a little bit more spiritual, but he talks about, like, there is no one right way. Like, there's no one right road. It's like, he made the analogy of a GPS. Like, if I live in Ohio. So like, if I'm supposed to go to Michigan, for example, like, I set my route to Michigan, it'll take me the most efficient route, right? But then also there's this route that goes kind of out west of Ohio and then comes back in, is a little bit longer, but it still gets to your end point. It still gets you to the lessons that you're supposed to learn, to the place that you're supposed to be, right? And he made that analogy of, like, there's no one right path, just like there's no one right route to Michigan. There's more efficient path. There's maybe sometimes an easier path, but it allows you to not have this weight on you of like, well, I need to make the right decision. The only decision that's right is the one that you make. And God, or whoever you believe in, will conspire with you to get you to where you want to be. You just need to be 100% certain in the decision that you're making and just stick to it and go. Because a lot of times, at least what he related, is the uncertainty is what gets you. The uncertainty and the, oh, like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I kind of want to go, but I don't want to go. Like that's what really stalls you and puts so much negative emotion in you. So I don't know why I brought that up, but that was really impactful for me because I was in that indecisive period for honestly years, and I was waiting for the right kind of sign or the right direction when I just needed to make a decision and stick to it and like just keep going.
Yeah. No, I think that's so relatable because there's people they're stuck. They feel stuck and they don't know, oh, is this going to benefit me, or is this option going to, like, which one's better? But just pick one and kind of stick to it, like you said, and
feel it out.
Yeah.
Allow your intuition, allow God or whatever you do believe in, allow that to drive you. And also the fear of the unknown is what a lot of people get stuck in, or they don't choose to make that decision because they don't know what's waiting on the other side for them. But if you just stick with it and stick it out, there is going to be so much beauty and so many blessings that are waiting for you. And maybe, like you were saying, it may not be the most direct or efficient way, but choosing option B, it may be filled with more blessings or
more opportunities, more growth. You'll be able to learn more. You'll still get there though.
That's so good.
It's true. And that's what we always work with our clients through, and just allow yourself to go through the times that are uncomfortable, that are unknown, because that's where growth happens. No one grows when you're comfortable. You stay small, and especially as women, we're capable.
So much.
So powerful. And why not use it to benefit ourselves and also the world and those around us?
That's good. Can I ask you guys a question about that? Not to flip the podcast funny, but to flip the podcast funny. So, because I know even I've heard during certain periods of like, and I talk about it all the time, like step into this for like, we don't grow, staying comfortable, like all those things. And I also, at least in my experience, those quotes are so impactful, but it's like when I'm in that discomfort, I'm like, this sucks. Like this.
Absolutely.
Oh, for sure.
Yes.
So how have you, in the some of the discomfort that you've been in, like, okay, this is the right path, but what have you done to either keep yourself quote unquote sane or keep yourself at least confident in the direction that you're going through with also the discomfort? And this can even be like you as a human, like what keeps you grounded and at least just like mentally not going crazy during this, or what are some things that you do to help you in that really uncomfortable time? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have 3 things I like to do: one for my body, one for my mind, and one for my soul.
Good.
So I would say, starting with my body, fueling my body with nutrient-dense foods that are going to allow my body to stay grounded and also move my body in ways that make me feel good, that are going to allow myself to come back to a state of peace and staying grounded. So I would say just allowing the body to feel the emotions, but also feel safe and feel comfortable. And then some mind. So I'm a theta healer, and I actually discovered theta healing through a previous business that I had, and through a podcast. And it was just one of those like fluky things that kind of happens out of nowhere, but it's always divinely guided. So during the time when we lost our grandma, I had no idea what to do with grief. I've never experienced grief or loss before. And I'm like, never went to therapy because I'm like, when people lose loved ones, I'm like, oh, I guess they just go to therapy. They go to grief sessions. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm going to do theta healing, because growing up, we were always around spirituality, tarot cards, or parents would have medium parties and tarot parties.
That's wild.
Yeah. So and crystals, all of that was just part of our day to day. Although we went to Catholic school, which is like the opposite.
It's so mind blowing to me.
And so our mom used to put crystals in her backpack. She's like, they'll make you smarter. They'll help you ace your test.
Don't tell anyone.
Don't tell anyone. Just leave them there.
This is amazing.
Oh, we had the best. So we had the best of both worlds. However, when our grandma passed away, I'm like, I'm just going to do theta healing. So I worked with my theta healer for 3 months and did sessions weekly. And within that time frame, my life just started to change. Things I was manifesting were coming almost instantly. I solo traveled for the first time. And so I was getting to the root cause of all the different beliefs, trauma, any self-doubts, fears, and allowing all of that to be transmuted and reprogrammed. And then I would say for my soul, meditation and allowing my soul to really speak and following that, where I'm sitting with myself in those uncomfortable times, whether it be going through autoimmune disease, injury, but allowing myself to sit in periods of alone and honoring what my soul or what's on my heart and is asking for. And it could be the most outrageous or weird things, but I'm like, you know what? This is what my soul is asking for. I'm going to do it. And it's also a form of self-respect and self-love. And that's what the last few years has been a challenge for me, is just coming into that form of self-love. And I would say allowing yourself to find something that resonates with the mind, body, and soul.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. One of yours?
Mine are probably like very similar, just because like, I mean, we live together, we do a lot together. But for me, it's like just sticking to that routine. And like, yes, it's the same. However, like for me, it's like continuing to showing up for myself and just like allowing myself to sit alone in meditation to really quiet the mind, get into the body. Also like sound healing, that's just helped me so much along my just whole journey in general, but it helped me most when I'm in those uncomfortable times, especially with grief. Like I didn't know how to deal with that. It's the first time we experienced it. And sound healing just allowed me to peel a lot back and heal all those emotions on a really deep level that I didn't really get to when I'm just like verbalizing everything or just talking things out. So that just helped me so much.
That's so good. That's so good. Yeah, I would say what you said, Abby, too. I clung on to this a lot earlier this year. Is like when I had so much unknown, I always tell a lot of our clients, like, you have to create some known when there's so much unknown, right? And so for me, when I was going through a lot of the unknown in my relationship and my business, it's like I had to really double down on my routines and like, okay, I wake up at this time, I go to the gym at this time, because that structure allowed me to at least put one foot in front of the other in a really unstructured or unknown future of what that could look like. So I appreciate that. I was just really curious because you guys have been through obviously a good amount, but also have grown through so much with it that I think that can be helpful, just tangible things for the audience too.
Thank you. Yeah, I love that. And I think just having a community when you're going through challenging times is so important because like you were saying before, maybe you don't know what the right decision is, but being able to ask for guidance, that one person that maybe you might not feel comfortable speaking to, but if you just ask, they may give you the best piece of advice and it's going to open so many new doors for you.
That's so good. So good.
Do you have anyone that is in your community that helps you either make decisions or when you're going through tough times that you can go to for advice?
That's a good question. And it's so funny that, not funny, it's so interesting that you like, ask that question, because that's something that I've been thinking about a lot this week. Is like, I have a loving family. Like I can ask them anything and they will. But what's interesting though is, and I don't know what this is about me, I'm trying to like get to the root of it, is I have how do I want to say this? It's challenging for me to even communicate what to ask sometimes, or it's challenging for me to even put to words. Like I know what it feels like, or I'm like, oh, I'm kind of wrestling between this. It's interesting is because my first reaction is like, just figure it out, or, like just kind of bullhead your way through it. I'm like, Coles, that's not how you probably should do this. Like, that's not that, but this is the area of life that I think growing the most in, is like actually being open and vulnerable enough to ask, or when you don't know what to ask, be like, I don't know what to ask right now, but this is kind of what I'm struggling with. And in knowing that, for me at least, that like it's okay and it's not a sign of weakness and it's not a sign of like that you don't know all the things. Like it's okay to not know all the things and it's okay to really ask for that. So I'll be honest, like I don't really have that one human where I'm like, oh, I would go to them for everything, but I have people in my life that I'm opening up to more when it's a relationship thing or when it's a business thing, that it's more me allowing myself and giving myself permission to open up about it versus just try to figure that out by myself, if that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah.
I can definitely relate to that as someone coming from solopreneur to having a business partner.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, I could just do it myself. It'll take me 2 minutes, where
I'm like, no, teach me.
and then it could end up being an hour. And I'm like, oh, I could have just did this myself. So I could definitely relate to that, where it's like, oh, I'm just going to do something myself, make the decision, and it is what it is. And I end up where I'm supposed to be. Or I can ask for help, but then the next time it comes around, it's, oh, okay, I'll actually allow myself to have the weight lifted off.
Yeah.
And then it's like that give and take.
Yeah.
It is. And I do think I value, and I don't think this contradicts, but I do think I value, like in myself, like I will work, I'll figure stuff out. Like I do value in other people. And I think in myself, like kind of going the extra mile to try to figure something out, but also that doesn't mean that you always have to do that, you know? And so I think it's like this kind of like you said, like give and take of sometimes, yeah, like put your head down and try to figure it out. And if give yourself a time limit though. If you can't figure it out within an hour or within 15 minutes, like ask for help, you know, and don't stay stuck there. But then also for me, it's like, that's my comfort zone, is like just putting my head down and going through. My discomfort is actually opening up and being like, hey, I'm kind of struggling with this thing. And so that's the area that I really need to lean into more too.
I could definitely relate to that. And I ask you a question: are you the oldest of your siblings, or do you have any siblings?
I do. I have one younger brother. He's about a year and a half younger than me.
I feel that could also be an older sibling thing too, where
you guys are paving the way.
And because I know, like, when our parents put us into school, it's like, oh, I did everything first, had to get an A and or I didn't have to. I always felt, I think I put the pressure on myself that I had to be perfect, or I have to do everything myself and not ask the teacher for help. So I think that could also be just as an older sibling too, like extra pressure that we put on ourselves.
It could 1000%, because like as you're talking about, I'm like, yep, that's me. Yep, that's me. Like I always say, especially when I was in high school, like I stayed in the lines. Like, you know, some people kind of like push out of the lines. Like they'll be like, oh, I'm gonna take a step out. Like, no. If you told me to do this, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do it perfectly and save the line. You know, but it's an entrepreneurial journey, is I guess I would imagine both of you experience. Like, there's no right way to do anything.
No. There's no rule book. No one tells you how to do this.
No rule book.
It's true.
Like, nothing. What you could charge, you know, $200 this person. The same service could be $50. Like, there's no. I mean, there's ethical things, obviously. Like, be moral, be ethical, but there's no pamphlet of how you do this right. You know, and I think sometimes for me, like, I have to untrain myself to do the right way, because there is no right way. There's a better way, but there's no right way. And I think that's been challenging for me the most, coming from like kind of that mentality to the world's your canvas, girl, and create what you want. You're like, oh, okay.
It's so
true. And that's been challenging for me, because I've always been one to read the directions, do exactly what I'm supposed to say, follow the instructions, and get it done. Where now it's like, oh, I have more flexibility, but I'm learning how to do that and how to go outside of the so-called guidelines.
Especially just coming from Catholic school, where you had to look a certain way, act a certain way. If you didn't open the door for someone, you were getting detention. Where now it's like, wait, there's a whole new world, a whole different perspective. It's like, it's crazy.
Have you guys ever read the 4 Agreements?
No, I've read the condensed version, but I haven't read the longer version.
I think hit deeply with that book, but the beginning of the book, it talks a lot about kind of the conversation that we have. It's one of my favorite books, but I think you guys would like it.
They have to read it.
It's on our list. We have. I see all this every time we go to bookstore,
Yeah.
Barnes and Nobles. I'm like, oh, I'm going to read that book. And then I end up reading another self-development book. So besides the Four Agreements, what other books for self-development do you recommend?
Well, oh man, I'm like looking. I don't know if you guys can see. All of these are books. You have here. All of these are books. I'm a book nerd. I honestly range everything from, I don't know if you've ever heard like The Extreme Ownership, Jocko Willink, the Navy SEAL that wrote it, to like super spiritual books of Untethered Soul, I think is what it's like. I range honestly all of them. I would say, and not to just because I said it, The Four Agreements is probably my number one book. Another book, I'm like just looking at it right now. I think from a spiritual standpoint, I love either The Surrendered Experiment or The Untethered Soul. I think both are gold.
I love those.
Yeah, I would have to say The Four Agreements is probably my favorite.
I love.
Yeah.
And speaking of books, what inspired you to start your own book?
Oh, that's a journey in of itself. It's like a whole nother world that I just knew nothing about. I will say, so doing the whole Mission 48 thing in the campaign, like I wanted it to not just be the campaign. Like I didn't want it to be something that you just did in 2023 and then, nothing really ever inspired from it or came about from it. And so I kind of had always like, I wanted to write a book on my radar, but I really didn't know what it was going to be about. And I thought it was going to be, because the whole campaign was about like raising young girls like self-confidence and really what is self-confidence. And that's been a big part of my journey of what I thought it was and what it actually is to me. But then it just, you guys would hit with this. I actually went to somebody that she like does journeying with you. So she like, you get in a really deep meditative state and like she'll journey and like I'll journey. And then we kind of chat with each other, like what we've seen or like what we experienced. And after that experience, like I just had a gut feeling of like, it's not about self-confidence. Like the book, that's not what you're going to write about. And so as I like thought about it deeper, I'm like, usually what happens, and so many people ask me about this, is like, how did you create Mission 48? Like, how did you go from kind of ideation to, wait, like you actually did it and completed it? And I realized in my journey too is people have these amazing ideas. People want to write books. People want to start businesses. People want to start their fitness journey, but they just don't know how. Like they don't know the tangible, like, okay, what steps do I take? And I realized whether it was starting even doing the crazy bodybuilding stuff that I did or starting my business or doing Mission 48, like I kind of had the same framework that I used for all of them. And it's like this 6-step journey from like kind of gut feeling to like what I actually did to do the thing. And so that's what this book's going to all be about is like, I don't know the title yet. And I don't know exactly the subtitle or like the ethos, but I have all the chapters already planned out. It's putting this idea or this dream or this nudge, and then actually what is the process to make it a reality. And I want people to actually like take this book and be like, okay, oh wait, this is a nudge that I have. Oh, I do want to start my fitness journey, or oh, I do want to start this podcast. Okay, well, like what's the next thing? Oh wait, I got to go past the fear zone a little bit. And like, that doesn't mean that I'm wrong. It doesn't mean that it's not meant for me. It just means like, I got to keep going, and then, oh wait, how do I actually break it down to take actionable steps to do the next thing? So I just wanted to be a framework for people to use to actually have these dreams come to life instead of just being dreams, like it actually being a reality for people.
I love that. I'm so excited.
I know. I'm getting chills as you're describing it. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to read it. I hope you do a book tour. Please come to New Jersey.
Yeah, I mean, my like big dream for it is I would love to have people like write in what their dream is or like, oh, I kind of want to do this, and to follow people along their journey and like in 6 months, in a year, like document them going the framework of the book to then being
I love that.
Here's my business, So I just, I still did pull a lot of it together, but it's like stirring in my heart, which I'm ready to get out.
I love that.
Oh my gosh. I know. I'm getting chills.
Yeah.
I'm so excited for you.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned self-confidence when you were younger and now. So what is your definition of that and versus what was it? How has that like changed?
Oh, it's like 180, like so 180. So I'll first share like what I thought it was, and then I'll kind of go into it. So when I was younger, and I come from like an amazing family, like I was kind of an athlete in high school. So it's not like I had a terrible childhood, thank God. I had a really good upbringing, but even with that upbringing, I always thought confidence was something that some people were born with or not. Like I remember seeing people like walk up in front of the class and like they were just owning it and they were able to like give the speeches or like kind of own the room. And I'm like, how do you do that? Like I don't have that thing. It just,
Yeah.
it felt to me like, well, I guess they just have that thing and I don't have it. And I just got the short end of the stick and, I'll always be this way. And so that was kind of initially the thought of like, well, I guess I just don't have that confidence gene that other people have, And then I remember in high school, I played sports, basketball, volleyball. And I remember I put so much of my worth into how I played. And if I would have an amazing game, I would walk out of the locker room and be, proud of how I played. If I had a really, not even bad game, but if I thought I had a bad game, I would not even want to go out of that locker room because I was so embarrassed to even be around people. And my dad didn't care. My mom didn't care. Like nobody cared besides me, And so at that moment, like my confidence came from who I was externally. How did I play the game? Did I get the A? How like all of these things externally. And so that was just something that I wrestled with. And I never really felt like that confident version of me. And so fast forward kind of going into college, and this would have been after my freshman year, is I was done with sports. I got out of a really bad relationship. And I just remember at that moment, I walked into my bathroom and I looked in the mirror and I was like, who are you? Like, I didn't recognize the physical version of me. I didn't recognize, like, it just felt like I had no life to me left. I didn't have the spark in my soul. And so I remember being like, all right, Kelsey, you got to get you good, girl. Like, you don't even know what that means. Like, what does you good mean? I don't even know. But like, you have to take a step forward. And so at that moment, I remember I was like, you know what? I'm not working out. I guess it'd be beneficial for me to work out. Like, let's just get into a workout room. And I didn't know really how to lift much. Like I was that girl in the corner, like doing my little 5 to 10 pounds because I didn't want anybody to look at me, but I just kept showing up for me. And I just kept being like, okay, I always say like, do it ugly. Like it ain't going to be pretty. You're not going to feel the best doing it sometimes, but I'm just going to keep showing up. And through that time frame, I remember Taylor, that's how Taylor and I met, like did the crazy bodybuilding. I don't advocate for everybody, right? But I remember also, this would have been later in my college years, I remember stepping on that bodybuilding stage and I remember having a body I never thought that I could have, like never thought that I could create that body. But I still remember being like, wait, like this could be better about it, or this could be better about it. And I was like, wait, I thought once I get the body that I was going to be confident. Like what's going on here, But I remember also being in that and I'm like, I'm confident not because of the body that I have, but I'm confident because of the promises that I've kept to myself. Like I'm doing something that I never thought that I could do. The days that I wanted to give up, I persisted through, And so that's where through that time frame, like people kind of see a shift in me of instead of kind of like being in the background, I'm like, no, like I'm walking with my chest a little bit prouder. And it had nothing to do with the external results. It had everything to do with me keeping promises to myself. And so that's for me now where confidence comes from is it has nothing to do with the business, the body, the whatever. I've heard this quote is self-confidence is self-trust. And so when you keep the promises that you make to yourself, like that's truly how it's built and it's not given and it's not comes from X, but it's really built internally. And so that's really how I view confidence. And when I'm kind of lacking it or I don't feel as confident, I check in with myself like, all right, Kels, like, are you keeping promises to yourself? And usually 9 times out of 10, it's like, no, I really haven't been. And then you can also gain it that way too. So that was a really long story to say it's built, not given.
No, I love that.
Me too. And it's so necessary to keep the promises to yourself. Because again, it's still that form of trusting yourself that you know that you are capable of the incredible things that you want to do and are going to achieve. And by doing so, it's also, again, it's still a form of self-love and a self-respect and just putting yourself first. Because if you are loving yourself, if you are respecting yourself, others are going to match that and they're going to meet that. Or the right people will match that. They will love you for you. They will respect you for you. And they'll also trust you for who you are, what you are.
That's so good. And I too remember in that time frame, like when I was kind of going through that kind of self-discovery piece in more college than anything, and they were great people. Like it had nothing to do with them, but there were people that I don't like didn't get it, I guess you could say. Not everybody should get it, but there was a lot like, oh, like, are you going to the gym again? And like, oh, are you going to eat your chicken and broccoli? I'm like, hey, for the chicken and broccoli, you know, but like they would kind of throw stones a little bit at it just because they didn't understand it. And I tell everybody, like the same people that were kind of throwing the stones a year later, once I like actually, you could see the outward progress, they're like, wait, Kels, how'd you do it? And I was like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you
Like,
know,
oh, now you want to know.
You see, I went through the exact same thing for bodybuilding. I was living in my sorority house at the time, didn't have a kitchen, so I was prepping with a microwave, and I would get my chicken. I would place orders at Whole Foods, and I would have them bulk my protein, and then I would make my egg whites and my protein pancakes in the microwave downstairs, and I would be getting up at 5:30 a.m. to go work out. And all the other girls are like, where are you going this early? Or I would be coming back from the gym at 8:30 and they're like, where were you? Where are you coming from? And they're like, oh, you slept at a boy's house? I'm like, no, I just like died in the gym.
that's so funny. Oh,
It's not the walk of shame.
it's a different one.
Exactly.
Oh, that's so
So I get it. I went through the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So what is your advice to those who are in that period of looking at themselves in the mirror and saying, oh, wait, I don't recognize who I am?
yeah.
What's your advice to them?
I would say two things. I would say the first thing that came to my brain is yes, the question is, and this doesn't mean you might be able to physically get them in your environment. Like they might live in Texas or, you know, Idaho, like, but get people in your environment, whether this be listening to a podcast, whether this be, you know, following on social, listening to their YouTube, like get people that have the values and are living the life that you kind of aspire to live. Not saying you're envious of them, but saying like, oh, like she's a little bit different in the best way. Like she's true to herself, or she's, you know, has things that I want to get, whether that be keying on your fitness or a business. Like get people that are a step ahead of you, that are great humans in your ecosystem. You know, bonus, if you can physically get them in your environment, whether that be, you know, go to a event or, you know, shoot your shot. I can't tell you how many Instagram messages I've sent to people that I'm like, I don't think you're ever going to see this, but, you know, let's try it. Like shoot your shot to the people that you really value and try to get them in your life. Like try to get them somehow in there. Because I think, this is at least my opinion, I think this is many people's opinion, but like we're not meant to do life alone, you know, like we're not meant to just like be isolated and try to muscle our way through. And I think, in my opinion too, the more that you have people around you or a part of you, and that might not be right now your friend group, and that's okay, they're not bad humans, but it just might be like you're taking yourself to the next level. And so you need people that are kind of on that next level to be like, all right, like keep going, you know? So that's number one, is get people in your environment, on your phone, in person, whatever. And then I would say number two is, I'm going to go back to what I said, is like get you good. And what I mean by that is, if you're not moving your body, move your body some way, whether that be lifting weights, yoga, something. Like do something that's a part of your routine and structure that is putting money in your bank account, like putting money in your Taylor bank account, putting money in your bank account, you know, and doing something that is actually giving life to you and has that structure. Because I think it can be so scary of kind of stepping into new waters where it's like, oh, like there's so much unknown that I think, Abby, we talked about, like you have to create known within yourself to some capacity, you know?
For sure.
And then bonus number one, just because it was big in my journey, is like, there's so much out there that's bigger than you. Like for me, that's God. For whoever, that might be something else, but like, don't feel like you have to do it all on your own. Like there will be guidance. There will be, I remember when I was in college going through that whole fitness journey, I walked to Barnes and Noble and I got a Bible and I was like, I don't even know if you're out there, but like, if you're out there, please like, let me know. And it was just me believing in something bigger than myself. And that really did help me along my journey, you know? So I would say those two things, and then the bonus third for sure.
Yeah, it's so important. All of it, the community, having people to inspire you, also just guide you or just to be there, help you. Yeah. And then also like filling your own cup, doing those things to keep that I guess, flow routine. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then for the same for us, God, and having that belief that there is something bigger than you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we always talk about this, or Abby and I, just live like your ancestors, how they did. They were so community based. The women were taking care of the family, the home, the men were the hunters and gatherers, and everyone had their part. But when they came together, they created beauty.
So good.
And it's the exact same thing. And sometimes I feel that society puts a lot of pressure on us to separate and to divide us. But if we're able to come together, find that common ground, we're going to be so much more, but also so much beauty. And there's so much power in that. So let's do it together.
That's so good. Yeah. I mean, I know the hardest times of my life is I isolated my own self, like I had amazing friends in my life. I just didn't let them in to what that was. And so, for me, community is so stinking important. Like, especially now that I do a lot online, I'm like, I need people for me in person. Like it's a non-negotiable now more than ever.
We're the exact same way because we have our business virtual and in person, and we're like, we're so community based, and even we brought that into our sound healings and our sound baths, and we create that safe space of, hey, if you just had a great day, come in. How could we continue to support you? Or we've had clients come in where they're just let their guard down, completely allowed themselves to cry, feel their emotions, and we're like, we're here for you. How can everyone else continue to support you? And we say, when you come into our home, into our studio, into our business, you're part of our family.
That's so good. So good.
Well, this was amazing. It's been filled with so much wisdom, knowledge, empowerment. Oh my gosh.
I'm so inspired.
Yeah.
I really am.
But we do have one last question, because this is something that both of us share such a big common ground, which is empowerment. And we know what empowerment means to us, but what does empowerment mean to you?
Oh, I've never been asked this question, actually. Nobody's ever asked it. Oh man, what does empowerment mean to me? What is initially coming to my brain is you feeling. Let me explain this. I'll explain this because it might not make sense. Is like you feeling truly in control of the decisions and the directions at which you want to make, but also so reliant on that there's something bigger that's a part of this, or you're a part of something bigger. And like for me, when I feel empowered, it's like, all right, girl, like you got this. Like you're stepping into maybe that next arena, or you might, like for me writing a book, like I don't know what that entails, but I'm gonna figure it out. Like you feel like, okay, I have this like figure it out, or this confidence about you that, okay, I'm going to take a step going forward. But then also belief that there's something bigger orchestrating to help you or to guide you on your path, and I don't think it's an either or. I don't think it's only believe in that and really have very little self-belief in what you can do, or have a ton of self-belief and think that nothing bigger than you exists. I think for me, empowered is like you having that confidence and that feeling of like, all right, like I got this. But then also, if I don't got this, there's something so bigger than me that's going to help me along the way. And he's got me, or, God's got me, or whatever that looks like for you has got me on the path of it. I've never been asked that.
I love it. So where can our audience find you?
Oh, man. I will say I'm the most active on Instagram. I was actually just joking with some of my my girls at the coffee shop. They're like, you need to get a TikTok. And I'm like, that just makes my head hurt. I
agree.
But they're like starting a TikTok for me because they're like, Kelsey, you need to be on there. Just send me videos and we'll do it. I'm like, solid. So on Instagram at Kelsey Lensman is like my main. And then I will be on TikTok eventually. But I'm also doing a lot of YouTube stuff as I'm prepping up for a race and just kind of sharing my story with it all. So all that on my social, you'll see.
Well, thank you so much for your incredible self, your knowledge, your wisdom, your power. This has been such a great episode, and we can't wait to see where your journey leads.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
For having me. I appreciate that. And everybody listening, thank you for listening to my crazy stories and all of that. I'm blessed to be able to just share this with you both. And I'm so excited for where you both are headed, like now. but then also what's to come. And we were talking offline earlier is like, let's have our two forces join and, really impact some people in a good way. So I'm just
Absolutely.
excited for it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Soul Over It. We are your hosts, Taylor and Abby Scarpello. Join us weekly every Thursday for a dose of inspiration, empowerment, biohacking tips, and some exercise for the soul right here on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. If you are listening in on Apple, don't forget to leave us a review.